A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Let's turn our attention again today to what we can call modern slavery, and sometimes that means forced labour, other times sexual exploitation, and the tragedy in all of that, women and children often the biggest victims of what happens in modern slavery. You might be surprised to know that Australia has a Modern Slavery Act, and it's up for review here in Australia. It was introduced back in 2018, and here we are, 2025, and it's time for a review. Well, let's get an update on things that are happening so far as that review goes. David Braga is back with us. He leads International Justice Mission. They are partnering with 19 countries. They're partnering with local authorities in 33 program offices in 19 countries around the world. David, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's great to be here.
David, back in 2018, it even rings a bell that I might have spoken to you about that at the time. And here we are, time for a review. Are the issues in that Modern Slavery Act for our federal parliament, are they outdated? Do they need changing? What are you thinking?
We certainly think that they need to be strengthened. So at the time, the Act was world leading. Only one other country in the world, which was the UK, had anything similar. So we were really leading on that topic, which is fantastic. The Act at the time, as a first step, only really asked our largest companies to report on the risks of modern slavery in their supply chains and the products and services that they provide for us. But the reality is there are millions of people around the world who have been trafficked into forced labour, and particularly in our region in the Asia Pacific. And so we want to make sure that those people are protected and this exploitation is brought to an end. So we think as Australia we can do better and we can do more, especially through the Modern Slavery Act to help these people.
Let's talk Australia for a few moments, because whenever anyone goes searching for the sort of exploitation of women and even children in brothels in Australia, they tend to come up with a all clear, nothing to see here. When it comes to the ones who are exploiting those women and children, oftentimes it's happening online these days. How does that all look when you're talking Australian context and Australian users of the sort of issues we're talking about today?
Yeah, so sadly, Neil, that is true. In terms of sexual exploitation online, there is a significant problem there that Australia contributes to, and so unfortunately, what we've seen is that in the Philippines alone, in 2022, our reports have shown that 500,000 children were trafficked for online sexual abuse in that year for creating new material. Sadly, it looks like from the Philippine Anti-Money Laundering Council that Australia is the third largest perpetrator and user of that material. So that's horrific, and creates a moral obligation for us to do something about it. So yeah, that's a deeply distressing situation.
You know, there's sexual exploitation and then there's the forced labour side of things. Is it still women and children who are mostly being exploited in those areas of forced labour as well?
It's still a really high, not at most actually, so it is actually more evenly shared between the genders in terms of forced labour. It's a really sad situation though as well. What if I give you a story perhaps, Neil,
Sure.
of a person in that situation? So if I share with you the story of Thazin, who was a 25-year-old woman in Myanmar, who was working in her village. She was cutting betel nuts and then selling those in the village. And a man came and said he was looking for workers in a broom factory in the city. And the money was going to be incredible for her. It was actually 70 times what she was currently earning. So as she said herself, it felt like hope had finally arrived. There was going to be so much she could have done for her family. And so off she went to go work in this broom factory. But the promises started to unravel. The hours got longer. She was moved on to backbreaking work, hauling bamboo. She was shouted at. Her pay was reduced. Then the pay stopped. And then the boss started sexually abusing her as well. And this went on for months until she was able to convince one of the night guards to let her escape. And that's when she decided to seek justice against her oppressor, not just for her own benefit, but because of the other girls in the factory there. So despite all the threats and intimidation, she pursued legal action. IJM got involved, and one of our local partners in Myanmar also got involved, the Yangon KN Baptist Women's Association. And the combination of that led to the perpetrator's arrest. The really good news in this case is that guy was given 30 years imprisonment. There was a police officer that was providing protection to him, and the police officer was dismissed. Now, there is a little irony in the story as well, which is that the perpetrator actually never went to prison because then he died before he was put into prison. But Thazin has now been supported by IJM and the Yangon KN Baptist Women's Association, and is now running her own business and has a rice shop in Yangon. She's also now become a survivor who's willing to advocate for what's happened and help show the government officials around her what has to be done to bring that type of harm to a stop so it can't happen anymore. So that's the type of story that we see repeated hundreds and thousands of times in different countries around the region. You have desperate people who just want a job, and then they get manipulated by people who can oppress them and put them into these horrific situations where they're forced to do all sorts of types of work against their will, and they've just got so few ways out. And they really need help from people like IJM and our partners to be able to come in and help learn that justice system, learn how to free them and set it up so then their perpetrators are convicted. And convictions like 30 years are fantastic because that shows other perpetrators that this will be taken seriously. And so that's the sort of story that we really appreciate because it shows that change is possible.
You're working in 19 countries, 33 program offices. When you're talking about the forced labour and the sexual exploitation, I guess our thoughts can imagine a team rescuing a woman or a child out of a brothel. But when it comes to being in a forced labour situation, is it the same sort of methodology that applies? You get wind that someone is being exploited, they're in modern slavery, you've got teams who know how to deal with it, whether it's a brothel or whether it's an illegal factory.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right, Neil. And we always work in concert with local government officials. So I've been in Thailand, and the team took us past a house just in a street in Bangkok, only 15 minutes from our office, where 17 Myanmar nationals had been kept inside that house, essentially working as a factory, making jelly candies. The gates are all locked. There's no way for them to get out at all. The living conditions inside were horrific, and they were just being forced to work there 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. And this is going on in the heart of Bangkok. So when we find out about things like that, in that case, we found out because somebody in the house next door heard about what was going on and raised it to officials. officials. And so IJM gets involved with the officials because we can do the victim identification and the victim aftercare, which doesn't often exist yet in these environments. And so we go in with the local law enforcement, help make sure that the victims are treated properly, and then start a restoration process to be able to look after them as they get released.
Come back to the Modern Slavery Act, up for review here in Australia. And we've been talking about things that are happening offshore, but in a digital age, what's happening offshore actually happens onshore here too. The sort of people who work with you, and no doubt you've got a bunch of volunteers, no doubt your team's on the ground, they need support in whatever way, and no doubt there'll be some call for some financial support even from our listeners. You're always looking for a new friend or two, but what about the sort of expertise you require? People who've got law degrees, people who know law enforcement, what it is to advocate for some of these issues. Would you like to connect with some more people like that?
Yeah, I think Neil, what we need are people who can work that way on the ground. So we don't often, in fact, I don't think we've ever had Australians go do that sort of program work. We look to hire local nationals to be able to do that work in country. We need people who can do that on the ground there. There are ways to help volunteer here, and we'd always love to hear from people who are willing to see how they could do that. So you can use our website, IJM, International Justice Mission, so ijm.org.au, and be in contact with us if you'd like to try and help in that way.
You're getting ready to open a petition that goes hand in hand with this review of Australia's Modern Slavery Act. What sort of things will be in your petition you'll be hoping people will sign up their name to?
Yeah, thank you. And this is a really powerful way to help as well, is to go to our local federal members of parliament and tell them that this matters and we care about it. So the Modern Slavery Act I was commenting on before was good in the day, but we think it needs to be strengthened. So a couple of places we'd love to see it strengthened. So the companies that have to provide reporting now, if they could also be required under the Act to consider where there are locations or products or industries that have a high risk of modern slavery, so they're forced to drill down on those, that will help bring better protection to people who are in this vulnerable position around the world. The second one is about how they do the due diligence of their supply chains, and so to tighten the regulations and the rules about how they have to look at those supply chains. And the third element is enforcement. So at the moment, the Act is only about reporting. We want it to also be about follow through, and that means that we also want the companies to be held accountable for how well they conduct themselves in relation to the Act. And I just need to say all of those asks are in line with the government's own expert recommendations. So we would love listeners' support to go to the website and sign up and help us with that petition.
Okay, that'll come live shortly in September, as I understand it. You'll be launching that petition for listeners to connect with IJM, International Justice Mission. You can do that at the website ijm.org.au, ijm.org.au. David Braga leads International Justice Mission. Thanks so much, David, for giving us an update today on 2020.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you to all your listeners as well.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.